As we come to the end of the summer season, we know that many folks are returning back home from vacation. Some have gone to the beaches on the coast. Some have gone to the mountains in the North Woods. Vacation is a time when we seek renewal, physical renewal, emotional renewal, and spiritual renewal. And so today, the way we come back from our vacations and we begin to focus our attention, especially this weekend, on the world of work. I realize that the spiritual challenge of our time is not about finding God in the wonders of the great outdoors. Somehow that's relatively easy and we know it. That's why we take vacations. I think the real challenge is finding God at work. For some, work is a wilderness, which too often feels harsh and uninhabitable. Most of us are familiar with the term workaholic. It has a rather ominous ring, as first suggested by Diane Fassel in Working Ourselves to Death, when she writes these words: "Everywhere I go, it seems people are killing themselves with work, busyness, rushing, carrying, and rescuing. Work addiction is a modern epidemic, and it's sweeping our land." We're tempted, of course, to view work as drudgery. And there are some, of course, who are not workaholics. Those are the ones who were probably being referred to on the sign on the employee bulletin board, the one that read, "In case of fire, flee the building," with the same reckless abandon that occurs each day at quitting time. And if you want a religious spin on it, you might prefer the sign on the wholesale shop, which reads, "If you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, you ought to be here 5 minutes before quitting time." For some, work is something that has to be done to make money, without taking the time to appreciate the true beauty around us. One of Aesop's fables tells of a farmer being at death's door and desiring to impart to his sons a secret of much value. He called them around him and he said, "My sons, I am shortly about to die. I would have you know, therefore, that in my vineyard there lies a hidden treasure. Dig, and you will find it." As soon as the father was dead, the sons took spade and fork and turned up the soil of the vineyard over and over again in their search for the treasure which they supposed to lie buried there. But they found none. However, the vines, after so thoroughly a digging, produced a crop such as had never been seen before. We're told that the moral is, there's no treasure without toil. So where's the real treasure in your toil, your work? Have you taken the time to dig to find it? Do you apply who you are in the labor of every day? Ben Cohen, writing in Choices for the Future, states, "We cannot suspend our values during the workday and think we will have them back when we get home. We're all interconnected. There is a spiritual dimension to business just as to individuals." And this is particularly true when individuals are your business. I think a good example of that is the story that Dr. Dorothy Dow Crane, a practicing family therapist in Rhinebeck, New York, tells about herself. She says these words, "I'm a therapist. My work consists of listening to people's stories. They come to me in distress, emotional turmoil, relationship problems, with children who are difficult, parents who are dying, and bosses who are impossible. They come with emotional scars that have them bent out of shape. My job, my work, involves listening to these stories. I am often appalled, overwhelmed. What do you say to an 18-year-old girl who tells you her mother punishes her? How do you respond to a 49-year-old father who is about to lose his home because of corporate downsizing? How can anyone respond to a mother whose young child has just been brutally murdered by the next-door neighbor? These are the stories. This is the pain that exists behind a quiet, mostly middle-class community, the one in which I love. She goes on to say, like Jesus in the wilderness, I am assailed by temptations. I am tempted to give up. I think of walking out in the middle of a session because I am being told, well, what I'm being told, the agony I am being shown is too much for me to bear, not to mention what it must be like for my client. I'm tempted to believe that I can fix the pain if I try hard enough. If I muster all my knowledge and experience, I can extract the sufferings of years of child abuse, both the bad too. Staying here, staying in the room with that anguish, takes all the energy that I can muster. I sit, I listen, and I enter a silent plea for help. A prayer that the divine presence will bestow the strength, meaning, and comfort that I cannot give. I cannot imagine surviving the workday any other way. But my work is about more than just survival. To sit with another's pain is an act of almost unbearable intimacy. To be fully present, I must acknowledge my helplessness. I must let go. At that instant, I am struck with awe. I understand that life is truly sacred, that existence is a miracle, and that it is something divine, not human. That's what keeps us going. The resiliency of the human spirit sitting before me is a testimony to that. I do not find God in the wilderness of work. God finds me. I share those words with you because, first of all, they speak to me. I've been there. Every clergy person has been there, has felt the pain and known the helplessness and asked God to make us instruments of strength and comfort. And it's part of the work that is done by many others, therapists, marriage counselors, school guidance counselors, personnel managers, anyone who works with people. And it affects us all, doesn't it? Very few of us work in isolation. Whether we work in an office or a factory, we interact with coworkers all the time. We recognize that the recent pandemic has made this a hot topic. We know that for some folks, there was no option. These were the essential workers. The staff in the nursing homes, the farm workers, the bus drivers, custodians, emergency responders, and for many of us, they were the delivery drivers. We wanted to be supported, Nancy and I. We wanted to say we care. So we bought a sign and we put it out in the front yard, a sign that simply said, "Thank you, essential workers. Thank you, essential workers." As the world of work has now begun to transition to what we hope is a post-pandemic world of work, we know that there is still fallout. Jean Ramirez Robson, who has been working remotely since the pandemic started. She works for the Northwest Center, a nonprofit organization that serves people with developmental disabilities in Seattle, Washington. She worries about the new normal hybrid workplace. Are remote and in-person workers going to be treated equally? Would those who choose to remain remote be sacrificing promotions if they choose not to come into the office? Well, the truth is that there is no one-size-fits-all answer to hybrid work. Just like we are now discovering that there is no single answer for hybrid worship, which is part of our work as Christians. Just like those in the world of work yearn to return to a collaborative model with colleagues, so do we wish to see our fellow brothers and sisters up close and personal in the fellowship of the Spirit. Maybe God, who toiled in creation and offered it to us, is calling us in the midst of our present wilderness to be a gift, a gift. You've probably determined that the title of this sermon came from the opening hymn, When Morning Gilds the Sky. Along with being one of my favorite hymns, I can never forget the combination of words when the author says, alike at work and prayer, one purpose I declare, may Jesus Christ be praised. That says to me that the spiritual need not be absent from the work that we do, that the God who labored for our sake also labors with us. Perhaps the question most asked of children is simply, did you wash your hands? And besides that, the question that's asked, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do when you grow up? Now that's really a question about work, isn't it? What is your work in the world going to be? Look at it another way. What will be your works? What will be your works? These are not fundamentally questions about jobs and pay, but questions about your life. Work is applied effort. It's whatever you put yourselves into, whatever we expend our energy on for the sake of accomplishing or achieving something. There are those, of course, who grab hold of life, and then there are those who seem to be out for lunch. Like the man who was driving down a lonely road one summer day. He saw a car with a flat tire pulled over to the shoulder of the road. A woman was standing next to the car looking down in dismay at the flat tire. So the man decided to pull over and be a good Samaritan. As he changed the tire in the hot sun, he became hot and sweaty and dirty. The woman watched him carefully, and when he was finished, she said to him, "Now be sure and let the jack down easily, because my husband is sleeping in the back seat." Happiness, as Aristotle long ago pointed out, resides in activity, both physical and mental. Life's greatest joys are not what one does apart from one's work of life, but with the work of one's life. In the 5th chapter of Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, we're instructed to pray constantly and to give thanks in all things. That prayer is not only what we do on Sunday when we come to worship. It is also the action of the Spirit of God in our life, bringing the Spirit to bear on every part of our daily labor, until all of us can truly affirm that God is present, alike at work and prayer. Amen. Our ancestors in faith gathered together long ago to remember, to be restored, to be renewed. They shared their story, prayed together, and made an offering to God Today we gather to remember and to pray together, to be restored and renewed, and we bring our offerings so the ministry of the church will continue the saving works of God. So let us gather our gifts together, offer them to God in gratitude and praise.